Okay, so now we're going to look at how to apply our patch using the blanket stitch. And it'll be very similar to how we did the blanket stitch before. There will just be some slight differences because our shirt layer obviously extends past the edge of our patch, which is different than when we're doing it on the edge. So we're going to start by coming from the back. And we could start by coming all the way from the back of the shirt, but then our knot and our tail would be on the inside rubbing up against the skin, which isn't super comfortable. So I'm actually going to take my needle and come up through my first mark but from the back of the patch, but in front of the shirt. And you can start on whatever marking you want. I'm just starting at the top center. It really doesn't matter where on the patch you start. I would just recommend not starting at a corner. So now we're going to go down through the shirt fabric right at the edge of the patch, just directly above our mark. I'm going to come to the back. And then we're going to come from the back up through that same mark again to create our first stitch. Okay. And then just like we did on the regular blanket stitch, we're going to come underneath our loop, our stitch of fabric, but not through the fabric, just to anchor the thread at the top. Okay, now I'm going to come from the front to the back through my next hole. And as my loop gets kind of small, I'm going to come up from the back of the shirt to the front, right at the edge of my applique. My pin. Right at the edge of my applique, directly above where I went down through the patch, and I'm going to make sure that my needle comes up through my loop. And then as I pull that through, my loop will tighten and it will form that first full blanket stitch just like it did before. And now I've already reached my corner since I started on my short side, so I'm going to go through that same hole again. As my loop gets kind of small, I'm going to come up through the shirt fabric right at the corner of my patch, making sure that I come up through my loop of thread. And then as I pull tight, I'm going to kind of have to hold my threads and guide them so that that stitch forms and that stitch is pointed right out to the corner. And once that's in place, I'm going to go through the same spot again. That's the third time I've gone through that marking. As my loop starts to get kind of small, I'm going to come up from the back, just directly out to the side from where I went in. And I'm going to make sure that I come up through my loop so that it forms my stitch. And I'm going to kind of hold my previous corner stitches in place as I pull tight. You may have to stop and kind of force your thread to go where it's supposed to go. Once it's in place, I'm going to pivot my shirt, and then I'm just going to pick up and keep doing my blanket stitch the same as before. I'm going to go down through my marking, come up through my shirt right at the edge, and make sure that I'm inside my loop as it closes, and my stitch will form. And then I'm going to do that all the way down this side. You can also, if you can take those front to back and back to front stitches in the same needle, you can. You don't necessarily have to take the needle all the way to the back. You just want to make sure that it goes through your patch layer and your shirt layer, and that when you come up through your loop. So I'm going to go down through my mark, up through the edge of my shirt, just right at the edge of my applique, and make sure that my tail is coming up inside my loop as it closes. If you find as you're pulling your loop closed that you weren't inside your loop and you end up with a diagonal stitch like that, don't panic. Just kind of grab your needle and pull some of your thread back through your stitch and loosen up your loop again, and then take your needle through it and pull till it's tight, and that will save the stitch. If you find that if you're working with a double thread and you find that your threads kind of get out of balance, so one of them's tight and one of them's not, just gently separate the two threads up here on your tail and gently pull on each of them until you see which one needs to be tightened. And then once you've got it tight, just gently pull on your needle so it gets back to the middle of your tail. You'll probably find that your loop likes to get caught on your pins that are holding your patch down. Don't panic. Just gently detangle them and keep going. As you're working around and you're changing to different angles, go ahead and just scrunch up your shirt as much as you need to get a good grip on your fabric. But make sure that you only ever have one layer of your shirt underneath you. You don't want to accidentally catch another layer of your shirt and so part of the rest of the shirt. You only want the part that the patch is being attached to. Okay, if you start to run out of thread before you're able to finish, like I can see that I'm not going to have enough thread to go around my corner, we're going to finish it just the way we would, just the way we did on the last one. We're going to go through the patch and tie our knot underneath, leaving ourselves enough thread for our next stitch. So I'm going to go through my hole since I'm already at the start of my corner. And I'm going to hold my stitches in place, and I'm going to pull so that I have enough to make the first, the diagonal of my corner stitch. And then I'm going to pinch that thread to my patch so that it doesn't come loose. And I'm going to take a tiny stitch to tie my knot on the underneath side of my patch. And as that loop gets smaller, I'm going to send my needle through so that I form a knot. And then that's ready to clip off and re-thread a new needle. Okay, so once I have my new needle threaded up, I'm going to come straight out the back of underneath my patch, just as if I had not stopped in the middle to tie that knot. Then as I come up through the corner to form my next stitch, I'm going to come over, and with my needle I'm going to grab that loop that I left and pull it tight so that it holds that stitch in place. And then I'm ready to just keep going with my corner. So my loop is getting small. I'm going to come up from the back, the edge of my applique, make sure I'm through the loop, and pull tight. And kind of, since it's a corner, adjust your threads and make sure they're laying where they should be. Then to finish this off, I'm not going to need to go into my fabric here because I already have a stitch formed there. So I'm just going to come to the other side of that stitch and come underneath my thread to form that top piece, that top thread between the two stitches. And once I've formed that, I'm going to take another loop around that thread, and then before I pull that loop tight, I'm going to send my needle through the loop to tie a tiny little knot. And so my knot is going to sit just right there on the edge of my applique. If you want it to be really secure, you can take another tiny stitch around your stitches, go through the loop, and pull your knot tight. If you have one layer that's not closing as quickly, just gently separate the threads and pull until they're both closed. And then once your knot is tied, I'm going to send the tail of my thread underneath my applique and have the needle come up just in the middle of my patch. And so it pulls that tail underneath with the knot. And then I'm going to trim off right close to the fabric. And my patch is fully attached with the blanket stitch, and it's protecting it from further snagging on the outside. So that's how you attach your patch using the blanket stitch.